Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Score Settled. Now in this video we'll be taking up 10 questions from the CUET-PG Economics exam 2025. Right, so let's start. The first question being, total food grain production in million tons in India for the year 2022-23 is. Now, I do understand these are Indian economy questions and you cannot just remember the entire data. So you have to make the best possible guess that can be there. And for that, you need to go through economics survey, go through the highlights itself, right, and the budget highlights. Okay, so these are published by the government, so you can go through them. Okay, so this will help you in making the most appropriate guess. So the probability of you making the right choice increases. Okay, so in this the answer will be your 329.69. Now this is a very factual kind of a question, so for this you need to keep a strong hold on your Indian economy data. Okay, similarly in the next question, in which of the following years India had a surplus in its current account? 2018-19, 19-20, 2021, 21-22. Now if I would have been at your place, it would be like, okay, 2019-20 was a COVID period, right? So probably there was a deficit in this one, okay, because the businesses were shut, we were under the lockdown period and so on. There were severe constraints that we were facing during that period. And suddenly when the lockdown got when we came out of the lockdown, so our businesses started booming, they started operating at the full scale. Probably due to that we experienced a surplus in the current account. So that's why if my guess would have been, it would have been 2020-21, and that is the right answer actually. Try to link these logics, right? So you should have you should be comfortable with the data or with the events that have happened 5 years down the line. We are not asking you to remember 1960s, 1970s, though important events are necessary, right? But still, if you talk about data, if you talk about the experiences of the Indian economy, it is important that you are well versed with the 5-year scenario that we have experienced. Okay. Next, direct tax to GDP ratio in India for the year 2022-23. Again, the Indian economy question, the answer is 6.11. So again, this would you can come to know about this from your economic survey and budget highlights, right? Okay. Next, with respect to the landholding pattern in India, medium farmers refer to those who have a landholding in the range of, now it is important, just keep a note of it, that marginal farmers are those who have a landholding of less than 1 hectare. Okay, small farmers are those who have a land holding of 1 to 2 hectares. This is according to the government definition. Okay. Semi-medium farmers are those who have a land holding from 2 to 4 hectares. Medium farmers are those who have 4 to 10 hectares of land, and large farmers are those who have more than 10 hectares of land. So 3 should be the right answer. So you should be very well versed with these definitions actually. Okay. Next, which of the following is not the correct assumption of Hecksher-Ohlin theory of international trade? Now, first thing that we know is that the theory assumes that there is full employment. So this is true. It is an assumption. Trade between the two countries is balanced. Yes, because it is also true. The trade perfectly balances. Okay. Then both commodities are produced under constant returns to scale. This is also an assumption. Constant returns to scale is assumed, right? So this is also true. Then demand preferences are not identical. This is the false statement. These are identical. Why we assume that demand preferences are identical? Because we know that Hecksher-Ohlin theory is based on factor endowments. So we have to assume that the demand preferences have to be identical to isolate the factor endowments from the to determine factor endowments as the sole driver of your trade. Okay, so we have to assume that demand preferences are identical. So fourth is the answer. Next, which of the following is not true about the classical and Keynesian aggregate demand and aggregate supply schedules? So classical aggregate supply schedule is vertical. This we know because classicals assume that we are operating at a full employment level. Okay, Keynesian aggregate supply schedule slopes upwards to the right. That is also true because Keynesians assume that we are operating at an underemployment level. Okay, classical aggregate demand schedule depends only on the level of money supply. Yes, because the quantity theory of money, if you remember, right, it depends on the money supply and the velocity of circulation. So amount of output that is produced is determined by the money supply. So this is also true. Keynesian aggregate demand schedule depends only on the existing capital stock? Not at all. Rather, Keynesian aggregate demand schedule depends on the consumption expenditure that takes place, investment expenditure that takes place, and government expenditure that takes place. Okay, so fourth is the answer in this case. Okay, now which of the following is not correct about the offer curves, right? So first thing is that offer curves were devised and introduced in international economics by Marshall and Edgeworth. This is true. This is a factual question, a factual statement, and so you must remember this. Okay, the offer curve of a nation shows the nation's willingness to import and export at various relative commodity prices. Yes, the willingness to trade. Offer curves actually show you the willingness to trade by a nation. The offer curve of a nation can be derived from the nation's production frontier, right? So this is also true. Offer curve of a nation bends towards the axis measuring the commodity of its comparative disadvantage? No, rather it is comparative advantage. So it is bent towards the commodity which the country can actually export. Axis on which the export commodity is mentioned, then the offer curve will be bent towards that, right? Which the country, the commodity which the country can export. Okay, so fourth is the answer in this case. Next, one of the conditions for national income or output to be in equilibrium is that the desired investment must equal the realized investment. If the desired investment is greater than the realized investment, then the difference results in that will be your shortfall. Okay, because the amount of investment that you require is more and the actual level of investment is less. So the amount of output that you require is more and the output that you're actually producing is less. So as a result, there will be a deficiency that will be created. Hence, it will be 2. There will be a shortfall. First implies that desired is less than your realized investment. No changes. Desired is equal to the realized investment. Okay. Next, the linear regression model is, so before proceeding, we should know what the linear regression model is, how it is expressed. Y is equal to beta naught plus beta 1 x1. Okay, this is how your linear regression model is actually represented. Now, the linear regression model is linear in explanatory variables but may not be linear in parameters? No. Non-linear in parameters but must be linear in variables? No. The linear regression model must be linear in your parameters. Okay, so parameters, the linearity amongst the parameters, that is your beta naught, beta 1, is very much a necessary condition in your linear regression model. Okay, so that's why the first statement is also wrong and the second statement is wrong. Linear in parameters and must be linear in variables? No. But let's go through the fourth one. Linear in parameters and maybe linear in variables. Now, in case of linear regression models, your explanatory variable can take any form. It can be x square, it can be log x, or it can be under root of x. So it can take any form. But the necessary condition is that the parameter is beta naught and beta 1, they should be, hence your most appropriate answer in this case. Last question is, which of the does equilibrium price and quantity perfectly competitive market does not hold? Okay, now in this perfectly competitive market, first statement, total surplus gets maximized. That is true. Why? Because there is no deadweight loss, right? Consumer surplus is maximum, producer surplus is maximum that can be there. Okay, so it gets maximized because it is operating a perfectly competitive market, is operating at an efficient allocation level, right? There is no deadweight loss, there is absolutely no wastage. Hence, this statement is true. Marginal benefit equals marginal cost. Yes, that is also true. Hence, it is called the most efficient kind of a market scenario. Minimum willingness to pay equals minimum acceptable price. No, because instead of minimum, it should have been maximum. Okay, maximum willingness to pay equals minimum acceptable price. Hence, this statement, the first statement, is false. All competitive equilibria are Pareto optimal? Yes, this is true. Okay, so the answer is 3. Okay, so with this, we come to the end of the video. We've covered your Indian economy portion. Again, it is very important for you to go through the highlights of economic survey, the latest one, and your budget highlights, the latest one, so that you are well versed with the 5-year scenario. Just try to go through the data. You should not, we are not expecting you to remember point by point data, but at least you should have an idea, right? So that you can make the most efficient guess that can be there. Okay, so these were the 10 questions, and we'll see you next time with another set of questions from the same exam. Okay, till then, take care. Bye. Thank you.